A bit of logistic issues, but then we're glad to be back on air. Thank you so much for your patience. You're watching The Conversation, and earlier on we told you that the immediate past secretary to the government of the Federation in Nigeria, Boss Mustafa, said that $6.2 million released from the Central Bank of Nigeria in February 2023 was done via a forged document. Now, the money, he said, was released for foreign observers ahead of the 2023 general elections. Mustafa stated this when he appeared as the fourth prosecution witness in the ongoing fraud trial of the immediate past CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, before the Federal Capital Territory High Court in Maitama, Abuja. And at this time, joining us to discuss this in the studios, we have Evans Ufeli. He's a legal practitioner. Thank you so much for joining us on The Conversation.
Thank you. Good evening.
So were you rattled when you saw the revelation by the immediate past secretary to the government of the Federation saying that Muhammad Buhari's signature was forged to get about $6.2 million out of the Apex Bank?
I was not rattled because I knew that, I already know that under President Buhari, a lot of corruption went down the drain. And the test for that on several occasions when he was asked on certain occasion on issues around him, he had told the media all the time, almost all the time, that he's not aware. So he was never aware of anything. So I am not surprised, except that the allegation is coming from a prosecution witness by the person of Boss Mustafa. And that allegation will have to face the fire of cross-examination. You know, it is in examination in chief, that is where he laid that accusation that the president's signature was forged. Okay, he is expected to go through cross-examination from the counsel of Emefiele, that defense counsel now. And it is on the basis of that the true picture of what really transpired will be revealed, whether or not that signature was forged, or whether the president actually signed it, or whether the president actually through executive activity, ordered that fund be released for the purpose that was stated in that letter.
Before we even talk about the SGF, when you look at the state capture that had happened under the former president, Buhari, and he now coming out to say he knows nothing about this and the others, that aloofness, what does it speak to you for someone who presides over the affairs of a country, exonerating himself from every allegation and every corruption case that has been leveled against him, against his tenure? What does that tell you?
It's very unfortunate that the president had not taken responsibility all through. And we have a very unfortunate tradition or precedent in Nigeria that once a person has served as a president, he is not investigated, he's not called to question, he's not invited, and it's never a question. And I think that's a very bad precedent. We look at South Africa, for example. Their former president, Jacob Zuma, is serving jail time now, okay, for activities that happen under his administration. But in the case of Nigeria, you just find one ex-president who is exonerated, who still live as if Section 308 of the Constitution, which talk about immunity, presidential immunity. It looks like presidential immunity still cover them, whereas the Constitution said that you're only covered during your tenure. Okay, so after your tenure, you are supposed to be, the next president is supposed to be questioned, supposed to be called to give an account of his stewardship. But in Nigeria, here, we don't do that. And I think it's a bad and dangerous precedent. Now, Emefiele, who is a past CBN governor, is the one that all the allegations are going to crumble on top, and he's the one facing trial now. Whereas it is not all decisions that he took on his own volition, but because this one is in court already, okay, the matter is sub judice. My duty here is not to say what the court will do or what the court will conclude, but is to say that trial will continue. And by the time cross-examination happens and re-examination happens on that issue, we'll find out exactly who did what, when, and how. So the court is competent enough to get that unraveled to the public.
Well, it seems as though the Constitution does not have a binding rule that after the expiration of a tenure, an handler of a government position should come forward to give account of his stewardship. But then when another administration comes in, a new administration comes in, they do not do anything whatsoever to call the previous administration or the handler of that particular position to come ahead and speak how he administered over the affairs of the country. So do you think that should be included in the Constitution to make it law and binding?
I think it's a veritable fundamental issue you raise, that, you know, because Section 308 protects the president, the governors, the deputy governor, and the vice president during the pendency of their tenure. Because they are protected, that is okay, because if they are not protected from criminal liability and prosecution, they will be distracted. Now, there's a sense in which that makes sense to us. But conversely, it does not and will never make sense to me as a lawyer that after serving your term, okay, and after, you know, you are out of office, you are not called to question for managing the funds of over 200 million people, for managing a $700 million economy. You are not called to question. Nothing of such is put forth. I mean, even when they make a handover note, they only make a handover note which is one-sided from the outgoing administration, and they hand over to the incoming administration. And that note is not scrutinized by anybody, no third party, no audits, no nothing. And when there's the continuity, the new president now comes in, he now has to, you know, go on as if the past president was perfect, as if there were no corrupt tendencies, and then they will now start to look fish for some government officials, smaller persons within the scope of that administration to prosecute. And I think that is wrong. The EFCC is charged with the responsibility to, you know, to address economic and financial crime, to investigate, trace, you know, make all the findings and prosecute. The EFCC must, as a matter of necessity, extend its prosecutorial and investigative powers to ex-president of this country, because the ball stops on that. There's no way the president will say that he's not aware of that transaction, or that it was never brought before him, so that we will know whether he declined or approved it. So I think we have to extend investigation to ex-president. We have it in South Africa already, so we should, as a matter of fact, extend it to the frontiers of our own country.
Okay, so we now go back to the response of the former SGF, that's Boss Mustafa, the immediate past secretary of the Government of the Federation, when he testified in court that he had no knowledge of the transaction and the document used to authorize the release of the fund, and he said that the particular signature was forged. I'd like my producer to pull up the slides talking about his response in the court of law, where he said that all through my service here as the SGF, I never came across these documents claimed to have been signed by the former president, that's Buhari. From the face value of these documents, having served for 5 years and 7 months as SGF. And he said this document did not emanate from the president. And he also said that the correspondence that has the seal of the Nigerian president does not carry a reference number, that is, the seal is the authority. And again, he said that also in all the 5 years and 7 months, I've never heard of the term special appropriation provision referred to. The term known to me, my lord, is appropriation as provided by the Appropriation Act, normally passed by the National Assembly, and when the government finds a gap, it brings. So we can just go on and on to look at his defense. Of course, what do you make of his statements? How do you assess his own defense as regards him saying that he's not aware at all of that particular kind of transaction? We don't even know if there are other transactions in that line where monies have left the CBN in the guise of the president requesting for it.
You see, at the risk of not sounding like defending the former CBN governor, I think that Boss Mustafa is saying two things at the same time. I have a problem with his premise, and also have a problem with the conclusion of his statement before the court of law. He said that that signature was forged. It did not, the president did not sign it. That is what he said in one side. And another side is saying that that document was never brought before him. Okay? That document was never brought before him. It did not emanate from. So he's saying two things. As an SGF of a country, is it possible for the president to get to sign a document without the knowledge of the SGF? That's one question that should be answered. Are there times where possibly emergency could lead to that? Or is it all documents that go through the president that must go through the SGF? That's another question. So you can see now that the input of the president is required in this testimony. Yes, and I urge the court to, issue a subpoena. That is what the defendant, they will make that application to the court, because that evidence needs corroboration, because the evidence that he has given is of two convergent views. He's not saying that, he's saying that the document, was forged in one breath. And another breath is saying that that document was never presented to, it did not emanate from the president. Could he have emanated from the president and the SGF was unaware? Since that government and that era was a government of being unaware of anything. Since the Mustafa himself just sounded like like Buhari. He was not aware, he had never seen that document. The president was also never aware of issues. So that testimony, that's why I say when it goes through the fire of cross-examination, it will be made clear. I do not hold brief on Ufeli because I have my own issues with Ufeli, with the way the economy was handled and all that. Okay. But the evidence has to be evidence that is unequivocal. It must be one that, if it's going to be admitted, it has to come with the purity of truth in it, and the probative value must be unquestionable.
Okay, Evans, in about 30 seconds before I let you go, would you say that the administration of Muhammad Buhari failed woefully in tackling corruption? Because that was one of the mantra on which his campaign rode when he wanted to become the president. Do you think he failed?
Of course, the administration failed completely. When the number one man didn't know what he was doing or where the country was headed to, it was a clear evidence. It was self-evident to us that 6 months into the administration, no appointment was made. The cabinet was not made up. No appointment. And after he got into the arena of performance, we discovered that his health began to fail him. In one occasion, he was outside the country in the UK for 90 days. Subsequently, we had other issues that came up, and not being able to do, apart from maybe the railway and one or two projects, nothing, you cannot lay your hands on anything very significant that administration achieved under 8 years. So it tells you that the administration failed completely. And as if that was not enough, the leftover, the debris of that failure is what we are seeing as the manifold corruption that has gone under the ground, where the CBN governor is now in the net of it, and the testimony of Boss Mustafa is also telling us that perhaps the court need to hear from the ex-president, and we have to deal with that.
Well, that's a big conversation that we need to continue to look into. Evans Ufeli, our legal practitioner, thank you so much for coming to our studios to talk to us. We appreciate that. And so, South Africa on Tuesday said it had asked the world courts to consider whether Israel's plan to extend its offensive in Gaza into the city of Rafah requires additional emergency measures to protect Palestinians' rights. The International Court of Justice last month ordered Israel to take all measures within its power to prevent its troops from committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza in a case brought by South Africa. Now, Israel has denied all allegations of genocide in connection with its war against Gaza's ruling Palestinian Islamist group, Hamas, and asked the courts to reject the case outrightly, saying it respects international laws and has a right to defend itself. So, Dr. David Matsanga, African Affairs Analyst, joins me from Accra, Ghana, and Fazela Mohamed, member, activist for Palestinian, joins me also from Cape Town, South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so let me quickly start with Dr. David Matsanga. Now, despite the ICJ ordering a stop to all actions of probable genocide against Palestinians in Gaza, Israel has remained defiant and is planning to extend its offensive to Rafah. So is Israel not pushing this revenge-filled crusade a little too far?
Thank you very much. First of all, I don't know whether you are hearing me properly.
Of course, we are.
Thank you very much. I am one of the few people in the world who knows what it means when it says, how it comes, and how it will come. I'm telling you that South Africa's case at the ICJ is a misplaced case. ICJ has no biting teeth. It doesn't bite. It can't issue summons. It can't take anybody to court. The South African case was dead on arrival because South Africa did not look at one component of what we call genocide. Genocide is committed when there is an intent. So this case, whether you go to Jerusalem, whether you go to Tel Aviv, whether you go to Ramallah, Rafah, anywhere, it will come back a verdict. There was no genocide. So for them to come back, they must prove that Israel has completely refused to say, go and inspect. Israel has called these people to come and look at the underground tunnels. The UN has refused. The people who are sent there have refused. So for you to go back to court. But one of the things why I disagree with Ramaphosa is Africa has got quite a number of difficulties, worse than what is happening, or the same as what is happening in Gaza Strip. But South Africa has never moved even 1 inch to go to the ICJ to accuse America for having put sanctions on Zimbabwe. Look at that. And you are running because Qatar has given you money, because IUAE has given you money. You are running to get the dollars from them. You run to this case. This case is as dead as its arrival.
Okay, let's quickly go to Fazela and get a reaction to this. Do you think that South Africa has no case against Israel? Do you think it's a waste of time?
With due respect, South Africa's case, the first leg of the case, they found merit to the case that South Africa presented at the ICJ. The ICJ made that finding. Yes, it is true that the ICJ doesn't have full authority, and it will still require a decision of the US. The US is able to block the decision. But I think that the decision for human rights and the fight for justice for the Palestinian people is an important fight for all of us. We in South Africa recognize that an oppressive colonial settler population and its impact on the people of South Africa, we understood that because we had a similar situation. We had a racist, neo-colonial state, which we fought and through the support of the international community. And many people in Nigeria as well supported our struggle for freedom. And I think, when we talk about such a massive scale of genocide, we can't have a whataboutism. What about Sudan? It is terrible what is happening there. Yes, of course, we know that. But I think that when we're facing one of the biggest, the largest numbers of civilians being assaulted in an open air prison, and people are bombarded left, right, and center, when Israel has never been held to account. I think it's for the first time in the history of Israel that it is called to answer a case. And I think that is really, really important because the age of impunity for Israel is over. So I think that South Africa's case and our president has the support of all our people in South Africa for the support of human rights and justice for the Palestinian people. I don't think it's a misplaced thing. I think that all over the world, people watch with horror. Just 4 days ago, a young girl called the emergency services in Palestine and said, 5 members of my family are killed. when the Red Crescent people found her, they spoke to Israel and said, we are going to rescue this young girl. When they went there, she was rescued. And she and the two emergency workers were murdered in cold blood because they were coordinating with the Israelis that we're bringing this young girl who's an innocent child. So I think we mustn't conflate these things. Innocent civilians are being murdered en masse. Since the ICJ made its decision, Israel has shown its contempt to the world. Because you remember, the ICJ is not some small organization. It represents the courts of the world, the court of the world. And if Israel just unilaterally defies the decision of the ICJ, it shows its contempt.
But then, Fazela, Dr. David, before you come in, let me quickly just ask Fazela, but then wouldn't you also call what the Hamas terrorists did on October 7, that assault on Israelis in an unprovoked manner, suddenly on a Saturday morning, wouldn't you also consider that as an act of genocide?
I think, when we talk about things, we mustn't forget the historical context, right? Israel, since its inception, has caused numerous massacres. We talk about Sabra and Shantala. We talk about the many other massacres just after the formation of the Israeli state. We talk about the bombardment of Gaza in 2021, and when there was no attack by Hamas, there was continuous assault on the people of Gaza. We know that when people were protesting on the border, peacefully protesting on the borders of Gaza, that they were shot down mercilessly by Israeli snipers. So we can't say that actually, this story started on the 7th of October. And I think in the South African case to the ICJ, they made an important and strong case for the consideration of the context. We all regret the loss of life, any human life. We regret that. But I think at the same time, we must say that we can't talk about a situation ahistorically, as if the world was created yesterday and today there's this thing. I think we must put the things in context, and to be fair to the Palestinian people, they are a people under occupation. And I think you must recognize what that means.
Dr. David Matsanga, what do you have to say to this? Most especially the fact that when you see the casualties or the number of casualties on the part of Hamas, or let me say the Palestinians now, not Hamas, about 28,000 Palestinians have been killed, 68,000 have been wounded, including women and children. Is there any justification?
First of all, let me make this very categorically, very, very clear to my colleague in Cape Town. South Africa has never witnessed terrorism. Never. You are there, you don't know the plight of people like us who are close to terrorism. Al-Shabaab in Somalia, that has gunned us in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ethiopia. You don't know. That's why your Ramaphosa is running around going to ICJ. But the moment you know what terrorism is, then you will understand why some of us, I fully support a two-state solution for the people of Palestine. I support PLO, the Fatah group of Palestine, but I don't support terrorists called Hamas. Any African derailed can support terrorism. I cannot be a party to supporting a group that actually daytime prepared, arranged, equipped, crossed over to go and maim. So they had intent. Israel retaliated. Unfortunately, Israel has gone beyond, which we can now tell the world that don't stop there. But when you come on a national television, international television of this nature, you must be very serious. When you say the people in Sudan who are dying, are they not having the same blood like the people in Gaza? Don't ever bring me with such individuals who tell me that people in Sudan, people in Congo, people in Libya don't matter. And the people in Gaza matter more than the people in Somalia who are being killed by terrorists sponsored by nations that we know.
Well, Dr. Matsanga.
I think it will be very bad for us to discuss. Honestly, let me make my point. It will be very dangerous for us to discuss. One person dying is bad enough. I am not a party to people killing people, whether it is from Israel side or Hamas people. Then we must come to a stop. Why I say the South African case is as good as dead is it went to a wrong court. That court cannot enforce anything.
So which court do you think South Africa should have taken that matter to, if not the ICJ?
Let's go to ICC. Let's issue warrants to commanders, both sides. The commanders of Hamas are in Qatar. They are eating food. They are relaxing. The commanders of Israel who are persecuting the war are there in Tel Aviv. Why don't you issue warrants on both sides? Why do you go to a moribund court that cannot give you any justice? My sister in South Africa, tell Ramaphosa, if he didn't go to school, we can school him more on international law because it looks like he doesn't know what he's doing.
Okay, Dr. Matsanga.
Let's go to wait first. Let's go to ICC, International Criminal Court.
Okay, Dr. Matsanga, let me quickly take Fazela's reaction. Thank you so much for your response. Anyway, now Fazela, there's been accusation that the UNRWA has been supporting or did support the Hamas onslaughts on October 7 against Israel, and they are still supporting that particular crusade. Now, do you think there's any truth to that, and could that have any exacerbating complication as to this offensive that Israel has taken in response against the terrorist organization?
You know, I think first, let us talk about the word terrorism. You know, Nelson Mandela was considered a terrorist by the apartheid state, right? Firstly, he was considered a terrorist. So, and many freedom fighters in Africa, when they fought for their liberation, were called terrorists. We know that. We know the naming of people who fight for justice in their own country are often called terrorists. And I think that we mustn't make a mistake and conflate what the terror groups are doing with the rights of people, the inalienable rights of people. The rights of people under occupation to resist the occupation is a fundamental right. So I think that we need to first of all clarify that.
So is Hamas a terrorist group? Is Hamas a terrorist group?
Yes or no?
David Matsanga, please. Dr. David Matsanga, okay. I beg your pardon. Okay. I need Fazela to respond to this. I will come back to you. We want to get all sides within the fewest number of minutes that we have. So Fazela, I'm asking you, is Hamas a terrorist group, or do you see it as a group that is fighting for the emancipation of Palestinians?
I think that Hamas was elected, I know that Hamas was elected in Gaza by the people of Gaza, right? That is their democratic right, number one. Two, under international law, the people of Palestine who are under occupation have the right to resist the occupation. Three, the kind of circumstances under which people in Gaza live under an open-air siege, they're not allowed to receive any information. There is the most absurd rules that govern how and what comes into Gaza, how people can travel. If you are not allowed to take your child out of the country because they are dying of cancer, or to obtain some medication for very, very ill people, and you have an oppressive ruler that continues with that kind of action against you, what option do you have? As we know, before October 7th, many people protested peacefully between the borders of Israel, at the points between Israel and Gaza. And how did the Israeli respond? They responded with terror. They are the ones who use snipers to kill people. They actually had a thing which they said they're shooting young boys in the knees to kind of cripple, to disable them. And so I think it's really important that as we work to these things, we must be truthful in how we respond. And we shouldn't criticize. Ramaphosa, as president of South Africa, has every right under international law to follow the rules of the law. I mean, if you have a dispute, you go to court. By going to court, you know, if you feel the court is moribund and useless, then that's fine, that's your prerogative. But if you want to use the international legal system, South Africa is full within its rights to actually use the legal system.
Now, Dr. David Matsanga, now, just to get your response quickly, earlier on you said you are a party or you would support a two-party state. Now, both parties, that is Palestine and Israel, have said that they would not in any way sit down to dialogue to channel that course. So what do you think would be appropriate right now to at least stop the killings, see how both parties can come to the table, if there could be whatsoever any resolution that can be agreed upon?
Thank you very much. If South Africa and my good friend Ramaphosa, whom I have defended on many things internationally, had asked me on how to file this case, I would file it this way. I would not start with using the word genocide, because genocide can never be proved in this case. I would have started by calling upon Israel for ceasefire, full stop, and keep quiet. I'm giving you free advice that the people here go back and see what is supposed to be done. Two, I recognize the Palestinian people. I recognize Abbas, Mahmoud Abbas, as the president of PLO. And if you touch him, I will stand with Mahmoud Abbas. But if you touch Hamas, that is killing people, I will not support you. I will support Israel on the question of looking for terrorists who have been killing people, who prepared during daytime and went to kill people. So Israel acted as a retaliatory system. It has acted beyond anger, with anger. So what we needed to do, my sister here, all of us, and I want to sound this to the world, the United Nations Security Council is dead. Have you heard my words? Dead. 2 countries versus 3. We have killed UN. Let Africa come in. Let South America come in. Let's form a new United Nations Security Council, which can command and bring peace in the world. The current one is dead.
All right.
D-E-A-D.
Dr. Matsanga, let me quickly just get Fazela's response now. What would you expect to be done at this time to quell the anger and the killings?
Well, I think that we need to call upon all parties. We know from the time of the Oslo Accords that Israel has no interest in honoring any of its international obligations. So we know that. We also know that this question about, trying to kind of say that, this child who was killed by the Israelis, she's a terrorist, you know. 2 days ago, there was a little girl who was found hanging from
Fazela, I just need your response in about 30 seconds because we don't have enough time.
So I think that South Africa, by the way, just for the record, went to the ICC and they have laid charges at the ICC. South Africa had over time tried to, South Africa, one of its fundamental foreign relations policy relates to peace building and actually human rights and justice. That is something that we hold dear and we cherish.
So definitely, definitely you would want. Fazela, definitely you would want the efforts of South Africa to prevail in terms of upholding justice and seeing that human rights are no more violated, not only on the part of the Palestinians, but also on the parts of Israel too. And I think that is where we'll draw curtains on the discussion for today. Thank you so much, Dr. David Matsanga, African Affairs Analyst, and Fazela Mohamed, activist for Palestine, for joining us on today's discussion. It was nice talking to the both of you.